Hey everyone, and welcome in or welcome back. It's a MonkieMar. Before we get into today's video, please make sure you click the like, the subscribe, and the bell for notifications.
Butte County, one person is dead and 4 others were injured after a shooting on a Greyhound bus. That bus had stopped at a convenience store in Oroville around 8 o'clock last night when someone on the bus just started shooting. The gunman eventually ran down the street to a Walmart. Police were able to track him down and make an arrest. This video here, posted to social media, does show sheriff deputies taking that suspect into custody. The Oroville mayor says he was told the man had some kind of disagreement with someone else on the bus. That happened before the bus stopped. Officials say they don't know the nature of that disagreement and have not said if the two actually knew each other. Oroville police say they will release more information later today.
I'm Mike Ramsey, Butte County District Attorney. Last night was an extraordinary event in our small town of Oroville. A mass shooting, something that we have not had in this community. So it occurred on a bus, and we are going to be hearing today to give a synopsis of what happened last night. Starting with the Oroville Police Chief and City Administrator, Bill Legrone, L-A-G-R-O-N-E, and then be followed by our Sheriff, Kory, H-O-N-E-A. So we'll start with Chief Legrone, and as what happened starting last night.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Thank everyone for being here. I appreciate that sad situation and dire one. But thank you for being here for us to get this information out to our community. Last night at approximately 19:33 hours, which is 7:33 p.m., the Oroville Police Department received a call of some sort of a dispute on a bus that involved a firearm and the discharge of a firearm on the bus. Officers were immediately dispatched to the AM/PM located at Orodam and Feather River Boulevard in Oroville, California. Upon their arrival, they located the bus, which was around behind the AM/PM, which is the normal drop-off spot for the bus. They arrived on scene at 7:34, which is approximately 1 minute after receiving the call. At the same time, simultaneously, the Sheriff's Department was also responding to the call to assist the Oroville Police Department. The request for assistance was made, and the dispatch center of the Sheriff's Department was also monitoring traffic and understanding the magnitude of the situation, immediately dispatched their deputies to the area. Officers arrived on scene. They cleared the bus to ensure there was no suspect on the bus at that time. They located several victims inside of the bus. They immediately began to secure the area, to locate witnesses, to secure any evidence that is there, and also began treatment of the individuals that were hurt. But they also began a search of the area for the suspect. The suspect was seen fleeing the bus in a southbound direction, which was headed toward a shopping center, to an open field, and then eventually to Walmart. At approximately 1954, which is 7:54 p.m., the suspect was located at the Oroville Walmart. Deputies immediately diverted to that area and detained the suspect at the Walmart in Oroville. And with that, I will hand it off to the sheriff who can give you more detail as to those events.
Thank you, Chief Legrone. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. As you know, my name is Kory, and I'm the Sheriff of Butte County. I'm going to take my mask off so that people that have a hard time hearing these events are better able to hear me. So as Chief Legrone said, the Oroville Police Department received a 911 call at around 7:30 last night from a Greyhound bus that was parked at the AM/PM market on Orodam Boulevard in Oroville. The reports from that bus was that there was a shooting taking place there. Of course, as you heard, Oroville Police Department responded. They asked for the assistance of the Butte County Sheriff's Office. We immediately sent deputies to that location. As our deputies were responding to that location to assist, 911 calls started to come into the Oroville Police Department indicating that the suspect involved in that shooting was now in the Walmart located about a half a mile south of the AM/PM where the shooting originally occurred. Our deputies, as well as allied law enforcement agencies, immediately diverted and went to Walmart. Upon entry into Walmart, our deputies, accompanied by a warden from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, encountered a subject. At that point, he had no clothing on, was acting in an erratic manner. Our deputies recognized or identified him based on the description that they had received, coupled with the behavior that he was exhibiting, and immediately were able to take him into custody without further incident or the use of any kind of force. So from that point on, we began to work the investigation in conjunction with the Oroville Police Department and the Butte County District Attorney's Office. We have a very good tradition here in Butte County of working these cases collaboratively, and last night was certainly no different. What we were ultimately able to piece together at this point, and let me preface these comments with, this is still an active and ongoing investigation. There is still information that is being gathered and data being analyzed. There is information that we have today that we're not going to release today because it's not appropriate at this point in time. So we're going to give you an overview. I recognize that you may have questions, but understand that the integrity of the investigation is very important, and we may not be able to answer questions. Additionally, I may not be able to give you information about the identities of various people, again, because we need to make proper notifications and make sure that the individuals who are involved in this have had a chance to talk to their loved ones. So with that, the information that we have from the passengers on the bus indicate that the suspect, who has been identified as Asaahdi Elijah Coleman, age 21, of Sacramento, boarded the bus in Redding, California. He went to the rear portion of the bus, eventually took a seat. During the trip from Redding, there were a couple of stops along the way. My understanding is there was a stop in Red Bluff and a stop in Chico. As the bus came into Chico, it appears as though Mr. Coleman either made a telephone call or received a telephone call. That seemed to agitate him. At some point, he began to have a conversation with other members of the bus. I think the conversations at this point can best be characterized as him acting paranoid and agitated. At one point, there was some discussion about whether or not people were going to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles being a dangerous place. And that conversation then prompted Mr. Coleman to show some of the people on the bus a firearm that he had in a small bag or satchel that he was carrying. When they arrived in Oroville, as they parked behind the AM/PM and people began to exit, that is when Mr. Coleman began to fire his weapon. As a result of that action, we have 5 people who sustained gunshot wounds or were injured. Unfortunately, one of those individuals passed away and died at the scene. I cannot release that individual's name right now because we are still working to coordinate notification of the next of kin. And I'm sure you can all appreciate the fact that we need to do that work before we make it public. It's the right thing to do. In addition to the victim who passed away, who died on scene, there was an 11-year-old girl. She was ultimately transported to the hospital and treated, and the report that I have is that she is currently in stable condition. There was a 25-year-old female who was pregnant, or is pregnant, I apologize. She sustained gunshot wounds. She was also transported to the hospital. She's been treated and currently listed in critical condition. There is a 38-year-old male. He sustained a minor injury. Ultimately, he was treated. His condition is good, and he's expected to be released from the hospital. There's a 32-year-old male sustained multiple gunshot wounds. He was transported to the hospital, underwent surgery, and currently is listed in critical condition. Again, I'm not prepared to release the names of those individuals because they need to coordinate. We need to coordinate to make sure that their family members are aware of what's going on. The information that we received, as I told you a moment ago, was that the suspect fled the bus right after the shooting occurred. We've been able to retrace the suspect's steps. It appears that he ran south, crossed Oroville Boulevard, through a commercial area with some stores. Behind that, there is a charter school with an area that is under construction. He went through the area where the construction was taking place, and at that point, dropped the firearm that had been used in the shooting. Later that evening, our deputies were able to recover that firearm. Then he continued southbound and ultimately ended up in the Walmart store. The preliminary information that we have with regard to his conduct within Walmart is that he made entry into Walmart, walked into the store a ways, ultimately walked over towards where the cash registers were. At some point became involved in a verbal altercation with a female. Her boyfriend was there, and then that resulted in a physical altercation that was broken up, at which point he moved to the front of the store, began to remove his clothing, and that is when, at about that same time is when our deputies arrived on scene and were ultimately able to take him into custody. Mr. Ramsey, do you have information on his prior history?
Yes.
Would you like to go into that? Okay. Now,
Do you have a spell? Do you have a spelling?
I'll finish up.
Go ahead.
Okay. Working in conjunction with the Oroville Police Department, and we called out the California Department of Justice Crime Lab. They worked on processing the crime scene as well as the bus. There are certain items of evidence located in there. I'm not going to go into that because, again, it's early on in the investigation, and it's better that come out at a time when it's appropriate for the prosecution. Ultimately, this is a horrific tragedy that was visited upon our community, another tragedy that we're having to deal with and endure in this community. My heart goes out to all the people that were on the bus, as well as the victims in this case. I am thankful that we were able to take this individual into custody. I'm thankful that no one else got hurt, and I'm really thankful and appreciative of the efforts of all of the law enforcement agencies in Butte County who came together once again in a time of crisis to perform what I would say remarkably well. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Ramsey to talk about the background of Mr. Coleman, as well as how this case proceeds.
Mr. Coleman's 21 years old. Indication is that he has been around California a bit. He had a juvenile record, but at this point we're not going to discuss that juvenile record. As an adult, he has had his brushes with the law and was currently wanted on a warrant out of Alameda for possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. So, prohibited person being youth and a part felony. We won't get into at this juncture because we're talking juvenile record. I'd like to follow up on what the sheriff had indicated. In the cooperation of law enforcement, we made the scene, because that the police, sheriff, DA's office came into was rather chaotic. We had some 25 passengers and a bus driver that had to be basically corralled, brought to this office and the sheriff's office to be interviewed and their human needs taken care of. Very fortunate to have a Victim Assistance Bureau in the DA's office called out their crisis response team and took care of those people last night, put them in a local hotel, took care of their toiletry needs, their food needs, some counseling needs, and those folks now are getting ready to board another bus to go on their way. This is the bus that they came in on. And you'll notice this is a bullet hole through that windshield. So that kind of the logistics of getting all of these people and their luggage all back together and now on their way back on a bus to LA has been somewhat extraordinary. Last night, the Department of Justice out of Reading came and did a large part of the CSI work inside of that bus. The Department of Justice criminalists did find some casings, empty casings, and the indication is they found 12 9mm extended casings, which was consistent with what we heard from the witnesses of somewhere north of 10 shots. So a lot of shots inside of that bus, a lot of shots through seats towards the front of the bus. Do you want to add before we take questions?
Yeah, I'll just make this note that what we will probably do once we are satisfied that we've made the proper notifications to the victim's next of kin as well as family members, then we'll probably release the name of the decedent through a standard media release. But that work needs to be done before we do that. And so that's all I wanted to add to that. I guess with that.
One final question here, Stephen. It's our intent. The man was taken into custody last night, Wednesday. It's our intent to see if we can get together all of the information necessary to file charges against him, and that would be at 3 o'clock tomorrow in Butte County Superior Court. So we'll ask questions. Bill?
Let's do this. We'll be systematic about it, and we're going to work our way across the room. That way it doesn't turn into a free-for-all. So I'm going to start right here.
Sheriff Honea, thank you. I wanted to ask you, all the things that you say that he, allegedly did, the suspect in all this, it doesn't sound normal. So are we looking into whether he was under the influence, if he was, in some sort of drugs or anything? Have we looked into that?
Well, that's certainly part of the investigation, and we'll make an effort to determine whether or not drugs or alcohol played a role in this, or whether or not there was a mental health issue, or whatever other factors may be relevant here. But that's certainly an ongoing part of the investigation. Good. Anybody on this side? Moving on. Yes.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are you able to specify what type of weapon was used to discharge those 9mm rounds?
Yeah, at this point, what we'll say it was a 9mm handgun.
Thank you.
You go. Moving across. Yes, sir.
Was there some sort of altercation with another passenger, or was it just his agitation, and was he shooting indiscriminately, or was he actually targeting somebody?
Yeah. So he was exhibiting what I think could best be described as paranoid behavior. There was some indication that he thought one of the other passengers was an undercover law enforcement officer. That resulted in some agitation. Certainly there was he was agitated and started raising his voice to the degree that ultimately resulted in a significant confrontation between the two of them. We're still working to clarify all of that. And as to his intended targets, who they may have been, at this point, I'm not going to speculate. We're going to let the case develop, and then Mr. Ramsey can develop that, and ultimately that can become disclosed when the case goes to court. So hold on a second, I'll come back. Anybody on this side? Yes, sir.
Was the gun possessed legally?
We don't have that. No, it was not possessed legally. We know that because he was a prohibited person. How he obtained it or what its origin is, that is work that is still being done. But we can say clearly that this particular individual in no way, shape, or form should have been in possession of a firearm. As Mr. Ramsey noted, there is a previous history of this individual who's merely 21 engaged in this kind of conduct. And so I'll work my way back and I'll come back to you.
I just want to make sure it's Asaahdi Elijah Coleman. Just want to make sure we got the spelling correct.
If Mr. Ramsey could help me out.
And then also, did he get on by himself in Reading, or was he with others?
He got on by himself in Reading, and the spelling of his first name is Asaahdi.
Can you say that one more time, please, if you would?
Asaahdi.
And how do you say it?
Well, we'll leave that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, I want to be systematic. Anybody back over here? Coming this way?
So, obviously, I wanted to ask you, you said he had some sort of warrant out of Alameda County. Is he for sure from Alameda County?
His residences have changed over some period of time.
Okay.
So to say he's from Alameda County, he has had somewhat of a transient lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Can you list out that warrant one last time? The warrant out of Alameda County?
Yeah, my understanding is it was a felony warrant for a probation violation. We don't know the underlying violation. We're still working with the authorities there to understand that. But
Where was he born?
we don't know that right now. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are we looking at any possible special enhancements to the fact that he had the gun not legally possessed?
That's a question for Mr. Ramsey.
That would not be, there's a separate charge for having the weapon. There's a separate charge for using the weapon.
Thank you.
Coming back this way. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One, I do a Google search. It looks like that AM/PM is a standard stop for Greyhound. That was a normal stop. It wasn't a stop because of passengers.
That's correct. That's our understanding.
And then secondly, the deceased female, do we have an age on her?
43.
Thanks.
Moving over. Okay, one last sweep back before. Okay, very good. And I recognize, especially with regard to our local media, if you need individual on cameras, we want to accommodate that, but we need to do that in an orderly fashion, so you don't have to wait your line. And as my standard practice, I always take care of my local media first. Okay? All right, thank you all very much.
And with that, it is a wrap. I want to thank you all for coming in. Thank you for watching. Please like or dislike, whichever you prefer, and subscribe. Everyone have a good day or a good night wherever you are in the world, and stay vigilant. I am out.